This is a Nanlite Forza 720B. It's a big, bright light. Alright, I'll see you next time. Bye! Sometimes it kind of feels like a light review could go that way, doesn't it? Anyway, my name is Jed Dobre, and this is a review of the Nanlite Forza 720B. It's big, it's fat, it's bright, and it's bi color, and it's pretty sweet. At the same time as they released the 720B, they did release a 720 as well. Now that one is about 20% brighter, but that is stuck at daylight, so it's a 5600 Kelvin. Now this one I've got here goes from 2700 Kelvin all the way through to 6500 Kelvin, and that's because it's bi color. Other than that, most of the features between the two lights are pretty much the same. And if you're a regular viewer of this channel, you would have seen that little short film that I did that was loosely about this light, and more to the point, was lit pretty much entirely by this light, a couple Parvo tubes, and a little bit with the Forza 300. If you haven't seen that, I'll have that and the BTS link down below as well. So if you have seen that little short film we did, or the BTS, you would know that predominantly my experience with this light has been shot at 2700 Kelvin. Now when you spend 2 weeks shooting at 2700 Kelvin, everyone starts to look like they're from The Simpsons just a little bit.
Scaredy cat.
One of my main takeaways from the 2 weeks using this light on that set was the quality of light is great and the quantity is ample. It's awesome to see that when you transition from a warm to a cool light, the transition is really smooth and full brightness is maintained throughout that transition period. If you're like me and the biggest light that you owned was a Forza 300, this light is big. It is going to be a lot bigger than that. It's kind of like two Forza 300s met on the night on the town and they decide to go home and play a little bit of Human Centipede. It's about double the size. So obviously this light is a much more powerful, stronger light. So it requires a lot more cooling to keep all the components nice and in working order. So it does have a new dual fan. Now, if you're someone who works in audio sensitive environments, don't worry, the fans are pretty quiet and you'll absolutely be able to use these. Now you can turn the fans off. You'll just be limited to 50% maximum output. So if you're in a really audio sensitive environment, you will still be able to get good use out of this light. So there's two ways you can mount this light onto a stand. You've got the standard baby pin that a Forza 200 or 300 uses, and you've got the big fat chode of a junior pin.
Go away, fat man.
Now this junior pin is what I would recommend using. The reason why, most stands that have that are gonna be big fat heavy duty stands. This light is 4.8 kilograms for the head only. So when you factor in that and a big fat diffuser and you're gonna boom that out, you wanna make sure this thing is really sturdy. In saying that, I do actually have this mounted on a baby pin right now, purely because my junior pin stand is gonna be too big and it wouldn't fit in the frame just like this. But I would highly not recommend doing that. Another part of this light that's been fully redeveloped is the ballast. Now this is a thing that on the 300, absolutely hated, and it's pretty well documented that not many people had a pleasurable experience with that ballast. Now it's not so much because of the design of the ballast, although there is a few issues there, it's more how it mounted to the light stand. It had this dicky little clamp that if it didn't break, it just never felt like everything was fully secure there. Now this new ballast has a fully updated clamp. It's essentially a super clamp with kind of like a Vmount lock on there. So this ballast just clicks in there, you know it's not going anywhere. That clamp is super heavy duty, and it kind of needs to be because that ballast is 4 kilograms. So if Nanlite does a version 2 of some of the other Forza lines, I'd really like to see them update not just the ballast, but also that mounting style, because things feel super safe and secure, and that's exactly what you want when you're on set. Also on the updated ballast, the Vmount location has changed. On the old style, it was kind of between the light stand and the inside of the ballast, and it was a little bit awkward to get to, whereas on this one, both of them are on the outside. Now, if you were to use two 26 volt V-mounts, you'll be able to get 65% of power, and that's super handy when you're on location. So still on the ballast, you do have all your standard effects. You've got your storms, your flickering lights, your TVs, etc. I actually used the flickering TV in that little short film, so once again, if you haven't watched it, make sure you go and check that out. More importantly, over the other ranges is the ability to control your light power in the increments of 0.1. This means from 1 to 100, I have 1,000 different options to really fine tune my light brightness. Whereas on the other models, you just go in 1 whole percent. So 1,000 increments versus 100 on the older models. You might go, 100 increments of brightness, how could you possibly need more? When you're doing some really fine tuned stuff on macro, having all that ability to really just dial in exposure is super duper handy. Have you ever had someone over for dinner and you're like, let's put a little bit of a, Mac Miller Kids on in the background, a bit of background music, and You put it on and you're like, ah, it's a bit quiet. So you bump it up 1 and you're like, well, it's no longer background music anymore. It's just that awkward sort of middle ground. That's exactly what I'm talking about. If you can dial in your exposure perfectly with those little increments, everything becomes much more easier to get the perfect shot. Maybe if you don't know what I mean about the music, maybe I've just got a dud Sonos, or maybe it's Apple's problem. I don't know, but it absolutely helps. The Ballast also has a bunch of different cable options like DMX for wireless control, and it's also got USB for future firmware updates, as well as Bluetooth and 2.4 GHz wireless connectivity. So you can control these lights from a bunch of different ways. So the Ballast redesign is not the only welcome change. This also has a fully new designed yoke system. This is just a single point of adjustment and you can dial it into whatever degree you want. This is super handy, it's much more precise and you don't have to feel around with both sides and you're not at the mercy of the interlocking teeth anymore. So that's really cool. It's also got a built-in umbrella holder. So if you're someone that likes to use umbrellas, you don't need to worry about extra attachments. It's all built in. Something else I really like about this light, there is a clear protector in front of those diodes. Now, where this came in really handy, when I was shooting that short film, I was doing the living room scene. I started shooting this during the day, but I ended up shooting at night because I was a one-man band. Things take time. Now what happens when you have a light source out in the darkness, all the mosquitoes, all the moths, the bugs, they just want to come and kiss that thing and go to an early grave. This thing fried a whole bunch of bugs. Now because there's that protector, the diodes have no issues, there's nothing wrong with them, no burnt bugs on them or anything like that. If there wasn't a protector, I'm sure there'd be smeared moths all over that thing. And it turns out that a reflector works out as a nice little cat stray. So this light's pretty sick. Now, as of today, recording this video, I believe it is actually the brightest by color LED spotlight on the market. It's just over $3,000 Australian, so it is not a cheap light. It's pretty expensive. But remember, it is not the tools that you use, it is how you use them.
All right.
So this light is a really solid light, but if you do not have a need for this light, you will not use it to its full capability and you'll end up spending too much. You might as well go out and buy yourself 200-300 Bs for the same sort of price. But if you're someone who's lighting big boy proper sets and you need that bicolor functionality, or maybe you're doing lots of work with the probe lens and you really need to dial in that exposure, or perhaps you shoot a lot during the day, maybe it might be interviews and you need to overpower the sun, then this is going to be a really solid option. So make sure you go ahead and watch that short film that I filmed about this light that was lit predominantly with this light plus the Parva tubes, and go ahead and watch that BTS because that will give you a little bit more of an understanding of this light and what it's capable of. So that's it, fairly quick and to the point. If you did enjoy this video, please big fat thumbs up and subscribe. That stuff helps beyond all words. Make sure you go and watch that short film and the little BTS, and you've already had your music suggestion today. It was in there somewhere, but if you didn't get it and you want another one, Major League Hard Feelings. It's good, I like it, I think you will too. All right, come join me on Instagram. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.